Hi there, I'm Ken Lammers. Welcome back to Commonplace Catholic. And this week we're going to talk about what Caiaphas was thinking when he condemned Jesus for blasphemy. So, let's get to it.
Lord Jesus Christ,
युगानयुग तेरा ही है.
Ilekroć bowiem sprawujemy pamiątkę ofiary Chrystusa,
Kweli ni vema na haki tukushukuru daima na popote, Bwana Baba mwema.
主の御体と御血になりますように。
Okay, so I'm having a debate with a Protestant friend of mine about a kind of strange idea he's picked up off the internet, and which, there was a book in the 70s that kind of supports it, that, there were Jewish people who believed in a biune Godhead, right? We believe in the Trinity. That would have meant they believed in the duality of a sort. And, to be fair, if you hunt hard enough, you can find some things that indicate there was, like maybe one teacher, one rabbi way back in the day who was considered a heretic, and other heretic movements, which you can usually do for just about any position, right? When you're talking about religions, because there's somebody who believes just about anything. But in reality is not a mainstream thought. Never was, as far as I can tell, for Judaism. Any of you out there who are Jewish, feel free to fill me in on this, because a lot of the sources I see are Christian sources that really want to find this, right? And I don't think there's any there for it. But beyond that, we're talking about all this, and he says to me, so what do you think Caiaphas was condemning Jesus for? What do you think he thought Jesus was saying? And we went back and forth on that, and I hadn't really done the research on it, so I didn't have a solid answer for him at the moment. I think I do now. So let me go on and let's talk about what we're talking about here. First of all, let's look at the passage we're talking about here. This is in Mark 14, and it is they've got him before the Sanhedrin. The high priest Caiaphas is questioning him. There's a number of people who've given witness against Jesus, but they're not good. They are contradicting each other, that sort of thing. And in the end, Caiaphas says, the high priest asked him and said to him, "Are you the Messiah, Son of the Blessed One?" Then Jesus answered, "I am. And you will see the Son of Man seated at the right hand of the power and coming with the clouds of heaven." At that, the high priest tore his garments and said, "What further need have we of witnesses? You have heard the blasphemy. What do you think?" They all condemned him as deserving to die. So that's the pertinent passage, right? You could get into it a little bit further, but that's pretty much it. And then the Sanhedrin, Caiaphas, the high priests of Judaism at the time, send Jesus off to be killed. Now, how does this work, right? What would possibly be the reasons that Caiaphas would have done this, the other high priests would have done this, when they were finding him for blasphemy, which, by the way, of course, is a death penalty in the ancient world. And it's impossible really to get into the head of any person entirely. But there's more than one possibility as to what the man was thinking, and the people around him were thinking. So let's kind of look through that. Here's something of an outline of it, right? Now, first is hypocrisy. Second is, being a Sadducee. And the third is aristocracy. These all kind of, overlap, but these are the three major reasons in the overlapping. First is hypocrisy. Jesus was going to be found guilty no matter what happened, right? There was no way that he was walking out of this kangaroo trial without having been found guilty. So let's talk a little bit about that. So this is the hypocrisy. He didn't even have to think about it, really. He was going to claim and find that Jesus was, committing blasphemy one way or another, and they were just going to get this troublemaker out of the way. And here it is, right at the beginning of chapter 14 in Mark. Passover feast and the Passover and the feast of the unleavened bread were to take place in 2 days' time. So the chief priests and scribes were seeking a way to arrest him by treachery and put him to death. And I've seen other translations, I think, that say arrest him at night and by treachery and put him to death, something like that. And then they decide not to do it because Passover feast and everything, there's a lot of people there, and they're worried that they might get an uprising. But they do eventually go through it, right? This shows that they didn't care. They didn't care. This guy was a troublemaker. These were the top of the people, top level people in Jerusalem and Israel, and they're worried that this. How did this is the way we were taught about Jesus in a educational way when I was in college. He was an itinerant, roaming preacher, right, who had grown a huge following. So even if you don't believe, and these people clearly did not believe that Jesus was the Messiah as we think of Messiah now, the Christ, they had a serious concern that he was going to kick something off with the Romans, and that was not going to go well. And it didn't eventually go well in 70 AD when a whole another thing happened, and obviously the temple got burnt and everything, and the Sadducees got scattered and destroyed. Okay, so that's it. That's the hypocrisy. Pretty easily put together and thought through. They didn't care. They were going to find that he was blaspheming no matter what. And so they really weren't thinking about it. Secondly, we get the fact that Caiaphas was a Sadducee, and the others were Sadducees as well. And the high priests would have been all Sadducees at the time. And I found this several places, but I'm just going to take it out of the Wikipedia thing here. The Sadducees saw the written Torah as the sole source of divine authority. So, the Sadducees, now what that means, for those of you who don't know, is what we call the Old Testament as Christians. It's called the Tanakh by Hebrews or Jewish people, which means Torah, followed by Nevi'im, which is prophets, followed by Ketuvim, which is the writings. Sorry, my Hebrew is so bad nowadays, folks. But they just said, no, Torah's it, that's it, right? And for those of you who don't know, when Jesus does this quote here, you will see the Son of Man, see at the right hand of the power, and coming with the clouds of heaven, that is referring back both to Daniel and Psalms, which were not things that were within the Torah, or the first 5 books of the Bible. And so relying upon those could also be seen and counted as blasphemy, because those were not accepted books by the Sadducees. Now, obviously, there were other groups at the time, the Pharisees being the primary one, that were out there, but until the destruction of the temple and the end of the Sadducees, I think that they were the ones really kind of controlling things. And they said, the Torah is it, man. And so Jesus, by referring back to books that were outside of the Torah, gets outside of where the Sadducees would find as actual by the book faith or by the book beliefs. So that's, first of all, we've gotten through what the hypocrisy. We've gotten through the fact that they're Sadducees. And then we get to, okay, let's assume that he is actually working with the oral or outside source traditions and believes that there's a Messiah or Messiah coming, right? The Messiah to a, first century AD, BC Jewish priest would not be what we think of as a Messiah. You can go back and the valid and I think important things to see are, you start with, for instance, Numbers 20, chapter 24, and you go about halfway down to the fourth oracle, and Balaam, son of Beor. This guy's having, and I guess he was supposed to be working for the enemy, and he just kept seeing great things for the Jewish people, and so it didn't work out. But he's like, I see him now, though not now. I observe him, though not near. A star shall advance from Jacob, and a scepter shall rise from Israel. That will crush the brows of Moab, and the skull of the Sethites. And Edom will be dispossessed, and no survivor is left in Seir. Israel will act boldly, and Jacob will rule his foes. So he sees the coming Messiah, or somebody coming, but which we always put as the name of this Messiah, as some great king that is going to just wipe the field of all Israel's enemies, right? And now, you will see more often, particularly dealing with Mark 14, Daniel 7, and Daniel 7, as you go through the first part of it, is showing all these different beasts, which are representatives of certain countries, if you read any kind of interpretation, and, how terrible they are and what's going on with them. And we get down here to 13, and the visions are continuing. These are visions for Daniel. And he says this: I saw coming with the clouds of heaven one like the Son of Man, When he reached the Ancient of Days being a name for God, and was presented before him, he received dominion, splendor, and kingship. All nations, peoples, and tongues will serve him. His dominion is an everlasting dominion that shall not pass away. His kingship, one that shall not be destroyed. So, here again, we are talking about a king, right? And a worldly king, although apparently one, if he came on the clouds of heaven, of course it's a dream, so you have to take some of this with a grain of salt. But clouds of heaven is he's one like the Son of Man. He's somebody who's a step above, right? But he becomes a king. This is your basic king who's going to rule Israel and bring them to the everything great. Then you get Psalms 101. Lord says to the Lord, my Lord, sit at my right hand while I make your enemies your footstool, the scepter of your might. The Lord extends your strong scepter from Zion. Have dominion over your enemies. Yours is a princely power from the day of your birth. In holy splendor before the day star, like dew I begot you. The Lord has sworn, will not waver. You are a priest forever in the manner of Melchizedek. At your right hand is the Lord who crushes kings on the day of his wrath, who judges nations, heaps up corpses, crushes heads across the wide earth, who drinks from the brook by the wayside, and thus holds high his head. So, this is, a psalm that David came out with. It's a psalm, obviously. And again, we're talking about a king, also mixed with a priest, right? And, high priest and a king, all that mixed together. So a high person, right? Not your general guy who grew up in Bethlehem or Nazareth or whatever. Grew up in a small town, son of a carpenter. And just so you know, the fact that Messiah is used as a descriptor for kings, basically meaning anointed one, right? So when we talk about Messiah, there have been people, and showing that it is a descriptor for kings. There were people who were not Jewish who were described as Messiah. If you look, this is Isaiah 45:1, right? Ka'amar Adonai le Mesuhu. Oh God, my Hebrew is terrible anymore. Okay, so said the Lord. By the way, this is the name of God. You're not supposed to say that, and the voweling that's been attached to it, as I was told in college, is incorrect. There is no known voweling for that. It just is. And you're supposed to say Adonai, which is Lord, rather than try to pronounce that name. It's not appropriate to say that name. And Lemasihu is for his Messiah. And you will see that translated in Bibles as anointed one, right? So it is a king who is anointed of God, right? So we have all this. That's what a Messiah would be thought of as a Jewish person back in the day. And your high priests would think, well, okay, he is claiming to be a Messiah. He's not a king. He's not a priest. He's not someone it would fit. And therefore, this is just straight up blasphemy. He is not anointed by God because he doesn't fit. He's not a king that's going to lead us out into our freedom. He is not a great priest. He's not the anointed. Now, look, before 9 million people jump me about this from the Christian perspective, yes, I know the Christian perspective. We all think he is. We know he is. And we, you follow all the things. He's from the right house, all this and that. But they would not. You're talking about a high priest and there's already a king, Herod, and then there's also Rome. Not likely to think that this guy who's walking around with a bunch of other people preaching, on the streets and around, that this guy is anointed by God to be the next king of Israel. So that's where you get, right? That they would look at that and go, no. God anoints kings. God anoints priests. You are not either. Therefore, you are blaspheming. You are insulting God by saying that this was going on. So there we have like the three interpretations that I think are solid. You do see a lot. I mean, we as Christians see this in a certain way, and we want it to be a certain way. And we look back and go, okay, this fits. But were a Jewish person to go through these, I doubt that they would be anywhere near where we are with this, right? So the Messiah was not seen as someone sent to save our souls, right? It was someone and sent to lead Israel to greatness. And they weren't seeing that with Jesus, therefore blasphemy. Now, those are three kind of really basic and I think fairly strong interpretations of what Caiaphas was saying at the time, all of which were probably mixed in together. But, rather than, people don't sit there in the moment and think, okay, A, or am I B, or am I C, right? They just kind of blob them all together. And that's probably what we have here. But it's not, this person is claiming to be God, right? It's this person is claiming to be the Messiah. They don't fit. It's blasphemy. And we need to get rid of him because he's a troublemaker, right? So that's where I think Caiaphas was. As I said, hypocrisy, Sadducee, aristocracy. Caiaphas and the other priests were being hypocritical. They just wanted to get rid of Jesus. They were Sadducees. They probably didn't believe in most of the stuff that we go back to in Daniel and Psalms and other things to talk about Jesus, because they only believed in the Torah, the first 5 books. And, aristocracy. Jesus wasn't in the aristocracy. He wasn't the high priest. He wasn't the king or anything. And therefore, he didn't fit. And that, folks, is my thoughts. I imagine it's a little bit rambling. I'm sorry about that, but a little bit rambling. But those are my thoughts about what Caiaphas' thoughts were when he declared Jesus a blasphemer and decided that he should be put to death. As always, comments below. If you've got better knowledge of Hebrew and can go back in and delve into these things, better knowledge than I do, great. You got first and second, century, church fathers that are saying, well, no, look, we know this and that and the other thing. Or you go back to old, Talmudic or Mishra or whatever sources and talk more about what the Jewish belief of the Messiah is. I would be really interested to see that, to be honest with you. But, so I look forward to anybody who's got more information down in the comments. Put something in that will make me think a little bit and maybe make me do a little bit more research. Anyway, that's it for this week. Hopefully I'll be back to doing these more often. I know I kind of fell off on it. Life intervenes, So until next time, everybody have a good week. Go with God, and I'll see you soon.